Happy Monday and welcome to After Party, everyone. Thanks for joining us here in the second week of our new time slot live at 9 p.m., although I know many of you are joining us via podcast and YouTube after the fact. As a reminder, please do subscribe. It helps us so much if you subscribe on YouTube. If you have not done that yet, subscribe on your favorite podcast feed. That's where we drop our Friday episodes just for listeners only. Appreciate everyone so much for sending in your emails to emily@devilmaycaremedia.com and for supporting the show. My group chat is here tonight. You know what that means. It's Inez, Stepman, and Rachel Bovard. We are going to bring them in just one moment to get Rachel really angry about parliamentary procedure. You may be wondering why we're covering parliamentary procedure. Well, if you are concerned about the integrity of American elections, you may be concerned about whether or not Republicans will use something called the talking filibuster to pass this very popular piece of legislation that the Republican base is basically demanding, called the SAVE Act. So Rachel and Inez are going to, maybe they'll fight, maybe they'll both support it. I don't know. We'll find out live. Also going to talk about what happened with Gavin Newsom down in Georgia a couple of nights ago. Actually, I think it was just last night. He is being accused of racism, not even just by the right. Some interesting takes on what happened at a book event with the mayor of Atlanta that we're going to go through. Katie Porter pulled out a whiteboard for some reason in her California campaign that basically nobody is paying attention to. Kash Patel chugged a beer in the locker room after the U.S. men's hockey team won the gold medal. Wild stuff going on at the BAFTA ceremony, the BAFTA broadcast, where you may have heard about this new movie chronicling the struggles of a man with Tourette syndrome called I Swear. Well, the man that movie was based on swore during the BAFTA broadcast, and it's now become a very sad racial controversy. Also, if we have time for it, Bonnie Blues says she's pregnant, and Puerto Vallarta is literally in flames. This is the weirdest slate of topics ever, but we're going to do it. Let's start now with Peter Attia. News just broke this afternoon that Peter Attia is resigning from his new contributorship over at CBS News, where he was brought on by Bari Weiss to be a sort of fresh voice from outside the kind of typical media establishment, although, I mean, he's more sort of like obviously, if you know Peter Attia, if you've bought his book Outlive, which I think is literally on the shelf behind me, that is a book focused on longevity. And so he's actually kind of a smart person to slate in as a CBS News contributor to bring on air to follow, for example, what's happening with the MAHA movement that has been installed in very high levels of the American government. But Attia, as it turns out, was mentioned about 1,700 times in the 3 million Epstein file documents. So the Hollywood Reporter is saying that on Monday, a note from the CBS booking department said that Attia told the network he would be resigning amidst all of this. What's interesting is that reports from inside CBS News, we covered this just a couple of weeks ago, or maybe even been last week, suggested Bari Weiss was pushing for Peter Attia to stay on as a contributor to push back against an example of quote unquote cancel culture, as Bari Weiss, and actually probably many others in this situation, feel is descending on Peter Attia, who, by the way, that book is a monster bestseller. He is very popular. He's not really politically polarized. Obviously, he's been in conversation with people in kind of MAHA world, but he's not a super polarized political figure. So the question, as we covered when it first came to light that he had been sending Jeffrey Epstein some emails, I think I'll put some of them up on the screen here just so you can see what we're talking about. Here's one. Peter Attia says to Epstein in 2016, "Thank you so much. See you next time. Hopefully Jeffrey Epstein is in town when I'm back in 2 weeks. I go into JE withdrawal when I don't see him." He then says at one point to Epstein in 2016, "Pussy is indeed low carb. Still awaiting results on gluten content, though." He also said, again, this was 2015, so mid-2010s, the biggest problem with becoming friends with you, I think he was clearly trying to say, the biggest problems with becoming friends with you. The life you lead is so outrageous, and yet I can't tell a soul. Attia has explained this by saying, he wrote about this from his perspective. He said, I wrote about this in my book. I was a bad person back then. Yes, people have matched the dates up. I should have been with my 1-year-old son, who I think was in the NICU, or 1-month-old son who was in the NICU at the time. But instead, he wrote in the book that he was in New York City for quote unquote work. And the dates line up, of course, with him apparently meeting with Jeffrey Epstein. He said that he was a young scientist trying to make it, didn't really know any better. Now, if you're emailing someone who was convicted of, sexual solicitation of at least one underage girl from the Florida case with Epstein about pussy after he gets out of prison, that certainly reflects poor judgment. And then even if, let's say, CBS News exists outside, it exists in a vacuum outside of the normal cancel culture debate. Let's say cancel culture never touched on this hypothetical world that CBS News exists in. The year is 1998. You then also have to ask some questions that have nothing to do with these traditional kind of cancel culture mobs and say, all right, does this impede on the workplace? As I talked about last week, I think that's a question. Are there women in the workplace, or men, I don't know, who are going to be weirded out having to bring Peter Attia into the green room knowing that he was emailing Jeffrey Epstein about pussy? Probably, yeah. Is that unreasonable? Personally, I'd think it was weird, but I would also say it was, a long time ago, and before the worst of the worst about Epstein was widely known to the public. So I don't know Peter Attia. And if I knew Peter Attia, I would have a better ability to make up my mind about that. But inside CBS News right now, Attia himself stepped down. I don't know if that was because CBS made it untenable, because Barry's support wasn't enough, or because he just didn't want to be a distraction and he genuinely felt like he should pull out. I don't know. Was he qualified to have that position? Was it helpful to the network to have that position based on his expertise? Absolutely. There's no question that he was a good addition to the CBS lineup. And does this undermine that? Does it undermine his credibility as a doctor, as a longevity expert? No, it doesn't. So for me, the question really is, does it harm the public trust that the network has because Attia was emailing crass things back and forth with Jeffrey Epstein? Well, given the public's level of skepticism about Epstein, you could probably make that argument, whether it's reasonable to blame Attia for that or not. You can probably make the argument that the network has to maintain its trust with its viewers. And if you have a guy palling around with Jeffrey Epstein, is that helpful? Probably not. Not helpful to that end if you're trying to restore credibility in media, which, of course, Barry says the broader project is. Now, we don't agree on everything these days, but that is the goal, to get more viewers because people trust you more. So you can see where that would come into the picture. You can see where it would come into the picture that some people have deep suspicions about about the severity of what Epstein was getting into. And now there's an entire question about if this is a Me Too witch hunt. I think there have been a couple of instances that do resemble Me Too witch hunt, but I also think we're still putting the puzzle pieces together on this, and we should be rational. We should try to be calm and stick to the facts. No question about that. I don't know. I think this Attia case is maybe the most challenging cancel culture set of circumstances that in recent memory, because you have Barry Weiss involved, you have Jeffrey Epstein involved, and you have the media, the medical world. I mean, it's just like this confluence of all of these different things makes it a genuinely tough one. I'd say they probably could have stood by Peter Attia. This is not significant wrongdoing, though members of the public are not unreasonably suspicious that there was more going on. I don't see that there's any evidence of more going on. Peter Attia writes about how in the book he was totally misguided around that exact time period. And those emails include a whole lot of people sucking up to Jeffrey Epstein who wanted money for their research. And was it wrong? Was I mean, if he was a convicted offender, they were probably rationalizing it in their own mind that their research is really important and can help humanity. So if they get some money from this freaky dude, assuming all they know is that, what happened in Florida, I wouldn't want anything to do with it. There's no way I would want to have any personal connection with him whatsoever. It's dirty business when people are trying to fundraise, and that explains a lot of this. But if I knew Peter Attia personally, I would be happy to testify to his character. I don't, so I can't. This is a tough one, though. All right. Enough babbling from me. In just one moment, I'm going to bring in our guests. But first, over the years, I have been clear about this. As you know, I am not just pro-birth, I'm pro-life. And being pro-life means standing with mothers not only before their baby is born, but long after. And that is exactly why I partner proudly with Preborn. Preborn doesn't just save babies, they make motherhood abundantly possible. They provide free ultrasounds and share the truth of the gospel with women in crisis, and then they stay. With real practical help, including financial support for up to 2 years after the baby is born. This is what true Christ-centered compassion looks like, not just for the baby, but for the mother too. So here's where you can make a difference. Just $28 provides a free life-saving ultrasound. That is one chance for a mother to see her baby. And when she does, she is twice as likely to choose life. Preborn is trying to save 70,000 babies this year, and you can be a part of that amazing number. So don't just say you're pro-life, live it. Help save babies and support mothers today. Go to preborn.com/Emily or call 855-601-2229. That's preborn.com/Emily. So happy to be joined once again by the people in my favorite group chat. That's Rachel Bovard, who's vice president over at the Conservative Partnership Institute, and Inez Stepman, legal analyst with Independent Women. Welcome back, guys.
Glad to be back.
Glad to be back an hour earlier. That's easier for us old people with children.
I know it is. And Inez is in the middle of like a giant logistical moving process, and she still made time kindly to come on after party. And you know what, Inez, there's nothing like a post-move party. That's the real party.
Well, that's why I look like I'm in a hostage video right now. My audio's bouncing off the empty walls.
Inez, I would take you if you literally were a hostage as a guest on the show, and we would do whatever we could to rescue you. That's who we are.
What's the code word? What phrase do you guys think I could say to convince people that I'm actually kidnapped?
Oh, good question. The education department should remain intact. Fund the education department.
No, I think it would be something like, I don't like being kidnapped, but they do have taste. So I can't argue.
If they have taste, that is to say. Let's talk about the SAVE Act, because I think it's going to make Rachel really mad before bed. And that's a goal that we have with the show. So Gavin Newsom recently, we're going to talk about him later too, but this is what he said about the SAVE Act. If people haven't been following, that's obviously, it's been pinging its way through Congress for a while. But if you follow politics, if you are, close to the average Republican voter, if you're close to people who are diehard GOP, the types of folks that are making calls at the party headquarters, you've probably heard about the SAVE Act, because the base is absolutely demanding the SAFE Act. And basically it is a voter ID, federalizes voter ID across states for people to vote. That does require some extra steps to prove citizenship, but we're going to get into all of that in a moment after taking a listen here to Gavin Newsom with Jim Clyburn, talking about how the SAVE Act is, as Chuck Schumer said, Jim Crow 2.0. Here he is.
And of course, we're not talking about the other aspects of the SAVE Act that go well beyond ID, and it goes to which is also part of Jim Crow, the history, and that is when it comes to registration, you got to find your birth certificate. If you know where yours is, I have no clue where mine is, or you have to passport, and 2/3 African Americans don't even have passports.
Oh, that's nice. Soft bigotry of low expectations on full display there. Finally, before I get your two takes on this, let's bring in Jamelle Bouie, the one and only New York Times opinion columnist, who did a little video for the Times on just how evil the SAVE Act is. Let's take a listen.
Many millions of Americans do not have easy and immediate access to their birth certificates. Moreover,
He's wearing a Metro
to
hat.
get a passport, you have to pay
Standing
about
for the Metro.
$165.
I was confused
And
by
to get a
that.
birth certificate, most states require you to pay a fee, $10, $20, $30, $40. Forcing potentially tens of millions of Americans to pay a fee to prove their citizenship, in
It's a poll
addition to
tax.
being potentially an unconstitutional poll tax, is something that degrades the notion that voting is a right. And that's what the
They're
SAVE
showing
Act would do.
suffragettes
It would
on the screen.
discourage people
Suffragettes on
from
the screen,
voting.
if you're listening.
And that, I think, explains why the administration is preoccupied with passing this. Because the president is worried that his party will lose control of Congress. And what this attempt to enshrine a set of election restrictions demonstrates is that Donald Trump does not see the rest of the American people as his equals. He sees them as his subjects.
Okay, well, this is probably going to be passed. I mean, it has been passed by a democratically elected House of Representatives. Most members of the Senate will support it. Republican members of the Senate will support it. It will probably be enough to get it over the edge. Rachel is going to have many thoughts on that. And as I turn it over to you, Rachel, let's put F2 up on the screen. This is a report from David Sivak at the Washington Examiner, who is highlighting some real and tough internal dynamics here. He said today, just hours ago, John Thune is facing rare MAGA backlash over the SAVE Act, including threats of a primary challenge in 2028 if he does not skirt the 60-vote filibuster to pass it. Mike Lee has been all over this. Rachel's former boss. I'm sure there's been some collusion between you nerds over there huddling on parliamentary procedure. So, Rachel, the Wall Street Journal editorial, or the Wall Street Journal, Kimberly Strassel thinks that you are wrong about this. You wrote about it in the Federalist. You are obsessed with the talking filibuster. You're obsessed with the SAVE Act. Why?
Well, so there's the SAVE Act, right? The legislation that is the voter ID bill. And then there's the talking filibuster, which is how a lot of us have said the Senate should pass it, right? Two a little bit different issues, although I would take issue with Gavin Newsom's characterization that people are too stupid, women in particular, to get their birth certificate.
You take issue with that?
I do. And in fact, I'm so stupid and too stupid to get a birth certificate. So I asked ChatGPT to make me a list of things that you need to do with your birth certificate. And I came up with all sorts of things like enrolling a child in school and
poll tax.
Yeah, and getting Medicare and Medicaid benefits and, you know, basic thing, and applying for a marriage license, which I also had to get a new copy of my birth certificate to do because thanks, Mom. When I called her, I'm like, do you have my birth certificate? She was like, we have 4 kids and your brothers are the ones I managed paperwork for, not you. So figure it out. And
marriage
tax.
tax.
I managed it. But yeah, so to get to the talking filibuster, the way the Washington Post characterized it is wrong. There's so much gaslighting around this issue. We are not circumventing the 60 vote requirement in the Senate. There are actually 2 ways to break a filibuster in the United States Senate. Everybody knows about the mechanical way, which is cloture, which is ending debate with 60.
No, first of all, no, everybody does not know about cloture.
Okay.
Yes, your friends all know about cloture.
Well,
yes.
Everybody knows at least about this idea of 60 votes, right? Everybody says, oh, you need 60
I
votes.
now know about cloture because I've listened to Rachel.
Yeah, I'm sorry. All right. Like if any of your listeners disgrace themselves and follow me on Twitter, you've seen my like intense autism at work on this question.
Yeah, it's bad.
Of how the Senate can operate. But okay, so you have the 60 vote requirement, or what we call the quote unquote requirement, which is how you end debate the mechanical way. You vote on it, right? This was instituted in the Senate in 1917. But the second way that you can break a filibuster in the Senate is by physical exhaustion. And this is the way the Senate has broken filibuster since its inception. Okay, up until 1917, it was the only way available. And it is kind of what people are familiar with in the lore of the Senate, which is, you know, Mr. Smith goes to Washington, you stand and speak until you can speak no more. That's basically what it is. It's a talking filibuster. It doesn't get utilized in the Senate very often, although they could bring it up they could go this route anytime. But the reason that people don't use it very often is there's 2 reasons. 1, it's hard. And 2, senators don't like working. Those are the 2 reasons that they don't utilize this strategy, because it's physically exhausting. You have to force Democratic senators to speak, and that requires participation of the full Senate. But this is and has always been available to the senators. And the reason, there's a couple reasons to do it, but the primary ones are, you know, once you've broken the filibuster, you can pass the bill, you put the question at simple majority. Every bill passes the Senate at simple majority. You either break the filibuster by invoking cloture at 60, or you break the filibuster by exhausting the minority. But second, it forces a public political process on a question that 83% of the country supports, right? I would love Democrats to tell me for 2 straight weeks why they oppose voter ID, when again, 83, 87, percent of the country says they support it. It's just good politics at the end of the day.
So why is John Thune resisting it? I mean, Trump would be happy with the SAVE Act. Voters would be happy with the SAVE Act. So why won't John Thune force the talking filibuster?
He has.
And why are people so mad at you for suggesting it, by the way?
I have found over the years that you can disagree with sort of the establishment here in Washington on policy anytime you want. They're not going to give a crap about that. But the minute you sort of pull back the curtain on procedure and you show what's possible, or you show how things are what we call failure theater, right? You're just doing this, but it's fake. They get irate. And I think that's the dynamic that's playing out right here is, they're upset about the fact that people know they could be doing this and they don't want to do it. And, John Thune's public comments have just been, well, we'll take a lot of time. His initial public comment on it was actually, to his credit, extremely honest. He said, yes, we could do a talking filibuster, but we probably aren't going to do it because we have a lot of other things we want to do instead, like pass Russian sanctions and permitting reform and a crypto bill. Things the country are clamoring for. But since then, he's basically said, well, there could be ramifications that we don't know about, and we don't want to get into those. There's been a lot of accusations that this is nuking the Senate or upending the filibuster. These just simply aren't true. Democrats did try to use the talking filibuster to nuke the Senate. This is not what Republicans are suggesting. The Republicans are saying this is just the Senate in its full measure. You don't have to change any rules to do this. The 60 vote requirement will still be there for other bills. You can still file cloture. You just have this opportunity. Lean into it.
Inez, do you see this as something that tells us a story about Washington, or that gives us insight into the way Washington works? Do you see this as Rachel getting really upset about something because she's mentally ill? What's the story?
Can't rule it out.
No, I actually think Rachel's completely right on this one, believe it or not. I every single one of the objections that Kimberly Strassel, who I generally think is a good columnist and has a lot of great reporting that she's done in the past, but every single one of the objections, even in her framing, if you strip back the sort of language around it, it was just the Senate doesn't want to do its job. It doesn't want to work. And the senators have other things to do that are more important than sitting in the Senate. And those are just not convincing to me. And I think Rachel's exactly right when she talks about the failure theater being the thing that cannot be exposed. Because, I don't know, for me, when I was in Washington, D.C., that was the biggest black pill of being actually in the city, is that not that everybody knows that, sometimes you win elections and sometimes you lose elections. Sometimes you convince the American people of your perspective on the right. Sometimes you don't. And the left convinces the American people and the average people in the middle, right, to go with their perspective. Like, everybody understands that you can lose this game called politics. What was really black pilling about being in D.C. was realizing that the people that are quote unquote fighting the hardest for you are actually just fighting this like fake kabuki theater kind of fight where they get to say, well, I voted against this, but in secret, they know that X number of people, like one person voting against a bill is standing in for 10 other people because they knew it wouldn't pass. Right. And that is failure theater. And so I completely agree also with Rachel's point that it helps to focus the country on a particular debate about a particular policy issue.
Right.
The last talking filibuster that I can remember, and in my political observation, was in 2010 or 2009 with Obamacare, where Ted Cruz did a talking filibuster. He read Green Eggs and Ham on the Senate floor. He did a talking filibuster, and people usually point to that as a failure. I did not see it as a failure because he rallied the entire half of the country behind opposing Obamacare. And then we saw this like populist outpouring against Obamacare that turned into the Tea Party, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So like it focused the country on a policy question. It forced all of the media to cover the policy question. And yeah, ultimately he didn't succeed because he wasn't in the But I didn't see that as a failure on his part. I think it was how the Senate was supposed to operate. So on this question, I'm completely with Rachel. On the substance of the SAVE Act.
Yeah, can I ask you about that, Inez? Because you are a legal analyst. You did go to law school, and this does federalize moral election policy, which some people on the kind of never Trump side are saying that's anti-conservative. There's the Jim Crow 2.0 nonsense. And then there's the stuff about real ID and how some states haven't mandated real ID, or some states, whatever it is. It's this idea that like real ID isn't everywhere. Not everybody has it yet. So there are different steps that you have to go through. Any credence to this?
On Jamel Bowie's points, by the way, it's the first time I've seen him on a video as opposed to hysterical columns. You know, there are always people who write in all caps, but then he kind of got that soft voice when he was putting it out on the video. That's sort of
these two things do not go together.
I expected him to have his hair on fire and just like screeching and running around because that's how his columns sound always. Anyway, I would like people just once to go and actually read the kind of poll questions that were used in the Jim Crow South, the kind of tests that were used to keep Black people from voting. And I want you to honestly tell me with a straight face that those kinds of questions are comparable to a request to prove who you are. That is not what those were. If you read them, they're intentionally confusing. They're meant to, and they were only applied to certain classes of voters, right? People who didn't have, for example, grandparents who were registered to vote, right? And then you read these questions, and they are difficult to answer for me. They are intentionally tricky. It was an obvious ruse. It was an obvious ruse that was covering for preventing people to vote. That's not what voter ID is. That's not what 80% of the country supports. And I would like just once, all of these comparisons, whether it's Gavin Newsom or Jamel Bowie, I would like them to pull up a side-by-side between some of the poll tests that were required under Jim Crow and the requirement to get an ID, because I think it would be instantly ridiculous. It would make the comparison instantly ridiculous because that's what it is.
What about taking this question away from the states? And does that bother you at all?
I do think it's important that the states maintain control over the elections. I did not like some of the comments that President Trump made on this score, that we need to take over the elections. That being said, there is a lot of regulation on state elections already. We have the VRA. We have interference with the way that people draw districts. I mean, like there are federal courts that interfere with that all the time. So this is not a pristine libertarian, like so many of these questions, right? There is a part of the right that wants to pretend that we live in a free market utopia, or in this case, a federalist utopia. The fact is, this is not something that is new or shocking in terms of regulation that's coming from the federal governments. But yes, I would like to see states maintain their position in the driver's seat over their own elections.
You want to know something funny? I just realized that my door is open the tiniest bit, and it's going to drive me crazy, but that's okay. My position on SAVE is, before we move on, similar to Ro Khanna's position on a billionaire tax in California. He calls it an anti-revolutionary tax. We don't have to debate the wisdom of that policy, but I think people underestimate the degree to which Republicans, and actually some independents too. I mean, voter ID it wins in a landslide in polling. I think people underestimate the degree to which Republicans have lost trust in federal elections because of the citizenship question. I agree with a lot of people that it's not something that's happened in huge numbers, that it's not, swaying our elections in one direction or the other all of the time. But the point that Republicans are making is that it could. Here in Washington, D.C., non-citizens can vote in elections. That's a messy, messy process that can obviously confuse the way people are showing up and voting. And so I see it in that sense for John Thune to think about whether or not he should be doing the Bovard strategy of a talking filibuster. Let's go back now to Gavin Newsom, who was at a book event moderated by the mayor of Atlanta yesterday. Newsom's got to get out there and sell books called, what is it called? Young Man in a Hurry. Cool. But here he was talking about how they're debating reports. So he's in Atlanta. He's talking to the black mayor of Atlanta. He was talking about race relations during this event. And then he comes out and does this thing about how he got a low score on the SAT. Can't really read very well. He's just like you. And so some people took this, we'll get into that, as him doing a soft bigotry of low expectations thing again, in addition to what we just covered with him and the SAVE Act and birth certificates and the like. But him doing that with like low SAT scores. Other people said, including Chris Rufo, we'll get to this in just one moment, that it was a pretty white audience. So it was just Newsom trying to level with people and be relatable. This is the clip.
I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just trying to impress upon you. I'm like you. I'm no better than you. I'm a 960 SAT guy. And I'm not trying to offend anyone, trying to act all there if you got 940. But literally a 960 SAT guy. I cannot, you've never seen me read a speech because I cannot read a speech. Maybe the wrong business to be.
I mean, incredible stuff. Nicki Minaj reacted by saying his way of bonding with Black people is to tell them how stupid he is and that he can't read. Let's move on now to Chris Rufo, who made a contrarian point. He said the accusation against Newsom is that he was condescending to Black voters, but from the video, the crowd appears to be heavily, if not mostly, white. Does the accusation still apply? Or does it depend on race? And if the latter, why? He goes on to say, I know we're supposed to laugh at Newsom, but he's an impressive talent whose political instincts are vastly superior to the perfect test score nerds who like to think they can outsmart him. You can put up as many IQ charts as you want, but it's a mistake to underestimate Newsom. And now let's bring in a reaction from the left. This is Nina Turner, Bernie-aligned person on the left who said Governor Gavin Newsom went to Atlanta and told the crowd that he is, quote, just like them. He had a 960 SAT, that he can't read speeches, how insulting working class people believe politicians are out of touch because they don't worry about the cost or rent or medical bills. Rachel, it seems to me, whether or not this is specifically racial, it is Gavin Newsom attempting, with his slick back hair, multi-$1,000 wardrobe, to relate to the average American, whether it's racial or not. So first, to you, is this racial? And B, even if it's not racial, is it still sort of a weird political strategy?
I mean, it's Gavin Newsom in his essence, which is chameleon-like, right? He is if what he means is, oh, I'm just like you. If he means I'm a deeply insecure tryhard, then yes, he is just like me, right? Because that is, I feel like that's what
relatable.
Yeah, like, well, he just sort of takes on the skin suit of the audience that he's with. You saw this in the Charlie Kirk podcast. You saw it in the podcast with Steve Bannon. He's like, oh yeah, I can totally see. I kind of agree, right? He just sort of, it's almost like deeply sociopathic in some way. He sort of just takes on like this, again, the like skin of whoever he's with, and he tries to reflect it back. It creeps me out every time. But it seems to me like that's exactly what he was doing here. He's saying, oh, look, I don't know that skin color necessarily plays into it. It seems to me like, he's trying to reflect the socioeconomic status of the audience and making a lot of assumptions about them, and then trying to kind of be that person to them. So I think Rufo is correct in the sense that is a very sort of, do not underestimate that political quality.
Well, and Inez, let me turn this over to you. One of the things Trump did very well was not try faux relatability and actually just say, hey, I'm going to give kids helicopter rides at the Iowa State Fair, not roll up my sleeves and stuff a corn dog into my mouth like Mitt Romney and many others. That was, I think, in this new media environment, obviously much more successful. Is Newsom doing that, or is he not doing that? Because on the one hand, I can see how he shows up looking slick, like he's Patrick Bateman, talking about how he's also kind of dumb, and it comes across as more honest. But it could also come across as like, bro, you're the governor of California, you grew up with the Getty family. Even you trying to say you had this dual existence is bizarre. You're not like us.
Well, the one thing that Gavin Newsom is not is honest, and I share Rachel's assessment of Gavin Newsom, which is that we should not underestimate his ability to sociopathically lie and just say within 30 minutes completely diametrically opposite things with a totally straight face. I know a lot of people thought on the right that, for example, Ron DeSantis won the policy debate, the California versus Florida policy debate. And it's hard to imagine how he could lose, not because Ron DeSantis did a bad job presenting the much better objectively state of Florida versus California, which is, literally on fire. But because Newsom was able to just straight lie, anybody who hadn't looked into it in detail, I think, will be convinced by his ability to lie. And so I would not underestimate him at all. That being said, I think you're right to draw the contrast, Emily, with Trump. I mean, what kept going through my head was I love the poorly educated. The Trump line, right? Which is just so much more honest and so, working at McDonald's in a suit and tie,
incredible work.
People know that these politicians are quote unquote not like us. We already know that. We don't need them. I find it always extremely condescending. I don't think this was particularly racial, if for no other reason than Gavin Newsom knows the politics of the Democratic Party. And would never make it. I don't think he's morally above it in any way, but I don't think he would make a racial comment like that or that kind of projection simply because I think he's smart enough to know that despite his 960 SAT score, I think he's smart enough to know that that would not go well for him within the dynamics of the party. I think this is what Rachel said. It's his sociopathic tendency to try to reflect what he thinks of the audience. And in this case, it's just unintentionally tipped his hand as to how lowly he thinks or how badly he thinks of the audience.
And I just want to say, I think Rufo is overestimating Newsom's talents a bit. He's right that he is more talented than a lot of the other Democrats. But I think what Newsom has on the others is he understands the media environment, and he is, let's just go back to this point about his sociopathy, willing to debase himself enough to... Fine.
I think it'll actually work really well in the current media environment. You would think that, hey, like in the age of the 24/7 news cycle where everything is on camera, how can you expect to get away with this kind of lying, which was very popular in the 19th century, by the way, right? A politician would do a train stop tour, and in the North, they would be for tariffs, and in the South, they'd be for free trade, right? So they would just say totally opposite things, and the local newspapers would write about it, and everybody would be happy. So this is not new when it comes to politicians, but I do think we've kind of weirdly looped back in the media environment where everyone has so little trust in anything.
Well, and it's because
video, it could be AI. And people just don't even look at material that contradicts their priors on the first glance. So I think in that media environment, being a really good liar is an essential and important quality for a politician.
That's super interesting. It's because I think there's information overload compared with the 19th century, meaning you could not.
Opposite reasons, same result.
Right. You couldn't pull what they were saying in the North and the South and compare, and unless you were swimming in information for whatever reason, you were a publisher or something like that, you would have no idea for the most part. So what were you going to say, Rachel?
I was just going to point out, I do think the media loves the character narrative that some of these politicians build for themselves, but the voters can always sniff out, right, what's actually going on. But what's interesting is that we always had this sort of artificial authenticity problem on the right for at least most of my life a little bit. We had, these dynastic political families, right? We had the Bushes who didn't know what the milk costs at the grocery store, and then you had Mitt Romney.
Oh no, the scanner. Didn't he?
The scanner, yes. It was, and then you had Mitt Romney who was like,
what is the sorcery?
Yeah, Mitt Romney, what is a pour? I've never seen one, right?
My favorite meat is hot dog.
Yeah, so we've always had a little bit of that, but I think it's interesting now because Trump, by far, right, is just the most authentic president we've ever had, just so comfortable in his own skin. But I would also argue that, J.D. Vance has a similar quality. People can think what they want about him, but the man is comfortable with who he is, and he just is secure, and it kind of comes across. And I would say the same for Marco Rubio. I would not have said the same for Marco Rubio early in his career, but I do think he's evolved into this person who's just very comfortable with who he is. And that's a nice position to be in, finally, I think on the right a little bit, was just like, all right, our people are who they are. They don't try to do this skin suit thing.
Both of them. I disagree with Rachel on both counts on Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance both. I think they're both insecure millennials.
Well, that kind of comes with the territory, right?
I think Rubio's an expert. Have that quality, and I think it's going to be a problem for us. Trump has a unique ability to do these things, and I don't think either one of those guys can pull off what what Trump does in this exact sense.
Is Marco an Xer? I think he might be.
He's Gen X, I think, but
He's a young
they
X.
can
Yeah,
they can both.
So he's he's got to be young Gen X, right? He's
young X.
40s.
To Rachel's point, I think they can both hit this minimum baseline though now, which I think is actually a good litmus test. Is could they sit with Joe Rogan or Lex Friedman for 2 hours and come across better than if they hadn't done it? I feel like that's where Harris failed. That's where others would have failed. I don't know if Gavin Newsom could do it.
If Kamala Harris is the standard for authenticity, then yeah, sure.
It's lesser of two evil politics now. I mean, that's the thing. Like, that's where Newsom could thrive.
Trump, and I don't see either one of those guys having exactly that thing. Rachel, I disagree on very precisely on what you're saying. I don't think either one of them is self-assured enough. One of the most remarkable things about Trump, at least from an observer, and I hate doing this kind of pop psychology, but it just is something that keeps coming up whenever I observe him, which is I don't think the guy has a meta-narrative in his head. I don't think he has that little voice in the back of his head that is concerned about how he is being perceived at any moment. He is just like embodied all the time. And that is something that our entire generation.
Your id.
Yeah. I don't know that we'll ever have a politician again who has that, simply because the type of people who are like that, I think they have been snuffed out by the internet.
Well, let's check in on a couple of very online people. First, the California Democratic Convention featured one Katie Porter, because of course, who seems to be stuck in amber, frozen in amber in the pussy hat moment of 2017. She's never left this era, and she's at the Democratic Convention in California doing the most. I mean, even Dems have turned against Katie Porter, who for a while was a kind of cause celeb as someone who could come across as authentically working class, just the single mom trying to make it. Then all kinds of stories came out, including one allegation that she like whipped potatoes at her husband, ex-husband.
Mashed potatoes, hot mashed potatoes.
Hot mashed potatoes?
Yeah.
That's not.
Who among us?
Yes, we've all been there. Jarrett just can duck really well. But Inez would never throw potatoes. Inez would never waste potatoes because Inez is an immigrant who doesn't waste food.
It's true. The Slavic table.
Yes. Anyway, Katie Porter comes out with a whiteboard that just says "fuck Trump" on it at the Democratic Convention. Let's take a look.
Simple, powerful message that we can all agree on. Say it with me. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's right. Fuck Trump.
That's right. We're about to watch the Murphy Brown reboot and, tweet at Stephanie
I have no
Rule.
ideas. I just have swears. Vote for me.
It's worse than that, Rachel. It's I'm telling you, this is all generational. This is like that cringy, elder millennial Gen X thing. And it's all the self-help books that say, I was effed up and I fixed myself. Here's how. It's the
Eat, Pray, Love.
Eat, Pray, Love. It's the same thing with all the sex stuff, like pancakes shaped like dicks, and this is the height of humor. Like it's incredibly cringy.
I don't cook books.
It's BuzzFeed politics. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but this is the thing. It's like, this is one of my biggest pet peeves, actually. Like, you want to make me mad before I go to bed? This is it. It's like these politicians who literally can't do anything. They don't do anything, but then they tweet like swears. And they're like, look how much I care. I'm authentic. I'm you. I can swear in my tweets. And it's like, somehow we're supposed to be, that's relatable. And somehow we're supposed to think they're fighting for us because they said the F word in their tweet because they called Donald Trump a shithead.
That's also like soft bigotry of low expectations, not in a racial sense, but in a kind of class sense, where they're trying to perform as relatable working class people by peppering their speech with contrived cuss words. And listen, Katie Porter actually, I think ostensibly before she got into her political career, I think she's a pretty normal, before politics, pretty normal person. Now, normal people don't really go into politics. And once you're into politics and you have to fundraise and go everywhere, it's almost impossible not to be corrupted by that culture. You're in a bubble. She's in a bubble. She's not relatable anymore. She's frozen in amber in 2018. And Inez, this is your home state. California's got the Newsoms. They've got the Katie Porters. It's also depressing.
There is nothing more depressing than California politics. And I say that as someone who moved to New York. So I think I have some perspective on the matter. California politics are still way more depressing. So that's just, to give you just the absolute floor. So yeah, I mean, California is totally screwed. It has no prospect of digging itself out, in my opinion, and it's just going to continue to be an example of failed leftist policies. We should just be thankful that they cannot build a Berlin Wall around California, because they are absolutely there in terms of trying to block people in, to make sure that they continue to pay outrageous taxes and so forth. But aside from the substance on the swearing issue, I do think it's just like cringe millennial culture.
It is.
I think it's everywhere. It's in that free to baby sex jokes stuff. I don't know if you followed that. There was a little bit of a online flap over this baby company, and it had just a bunch of sex jokes in the advertising, which people obviously found inappropriate for a baby company. But I think that's just the way it is. And I really actually recommend John McWhorter's 9 Nasty Words on this, because I think it has a really interesting insight onto how we curse. And the reality is that words like the F word, and I'm not going to bomb I think on this channel we could say it, but I'm not going to bomb it for you, Emily, but like basically that they have become blue rather than truly obscene, the same way that hell and damn moved into the past. And John McWhorter, as a linguist, who I find him much more interesting as a linguist than as a somebody whose takes on politics, but is that we had 3 basically eras of swearing in English. The first were the worst words. You could say all kinds of things related to sex and other matters of the body, but what was really obscene was things that contradicted religion, right? So damn and hell were worse than saying the F word. Then we moved into this era where everything that was obscene had to do with the body, and apparently this coincided with people actually being able to have enough space to put up walls. Because before, you just saw everything all the time, bodily function, sex, within the household. There was no wealth to separate yourself from. And that's really where I think we grew up at the end of that era. Now, the things that are actually obscene are definitely having to do with identity, right? Because you cannot imagine any of these people dropping the N word or the F word, the other F word, right? They would never in a million years use those actually obscene terms, because those actually create the same reaction in people that the F word did 20, 30, 40 years ago. So this is like a faux, it's not really rebellious. It's not really shocking. Even though we're saying the F word, we all use this word in our daily lives. Maybe that's not a good thing, but it's no longer
for me during Lent.
Yeah, no,
it's no longer truly obscene.
Don't implicate
my point is actually just like it is a very surface level kind of faux transgression that isn't actually a transgression. Because again, you cannot imagine a single one of these people. They would never ever use any of the slurs related to identity, because those are actually the obscenities in our culture. And I think that does say a lot about what we worship, right? First we worshiped God, then we worshiped the body, then we worshiped identity. And that's the true taboo.
That is a really good point. Before we take a break, I want to keep playing cringe or no cringe. We've decided Katie Porter's cringe. What about Kash Patel swilling beers after USA hockey wins in Milan? Men's hockey, I should specify. It's very great that the women won as well. Kash is, let's just play this, and then we'll react to it. But Kash, who there's a whole controversy over what he was doing there. He said he was monitoring interagency cooperation. Obviously, you can see how there's a legitimate reason for the FBI, which is coordinating with other law enforcement internationally to provide security at the Olympics. That makes sense from my vantage point. But that's what he said he was doing there. All kinds of debate about why this was an expensive and necessary trip. Kash is having the time of his life with the men's hockey team. They're singing Toby Keith. They're pounding brews. Let's take a look. He's wasting beer. Just throwing it. Pounding his chest. All right, we probably got it there. It's an amazing clip. Like, watching those guys go, it's an amazing clip. But the Kash of it all, there was a guy who went on to Mar-a-Lago with a gun and a fuel canister, like almost as this was happening. Savannah Guthrie's mom is still missing. To me, just like the video, I loved the hockey team having fun. That was amazing. Amazing win. Kash looked like he was trying really hard to fit in with a bunch of bros. I know he loves hockey and I know he plays hockey. But to me, I thought it came across a little cringe. I now open up the floor to Rachel and then to Inez.
Yeah, I'm inclined to give him a little bit of grace because they clearly wanted him there, right?
Yeah, that's true.
If he had inserted himself in this and it was
he says they invited him in.
Right, and they're putting their medals around his neck, like he's hanging out with them. He didn't post that video, right? He's not trying to like flex on people and be like, insert himself as the main character. So I have a little bit of grace for that. I also just think it's like pure Americana. Like he got Trump on the phone later. And like Trump talking to the gold medal hockey team is kind of, what I sign up for in the Olympics. So I take the point. It's not a superb look, but for a moment of Olympic grace, I'll let it pass.
What say you, Inez?
I loved it. I fell down a rabbit hole, by the way, with Kash Patel, like looking up where his people are from in India.
Oh,
and they're from like some kind of subcaste in India that's allowed to drink alcohol and eat meat.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
So much sense because he just seems like a bro. This is actually not inauthentic from him. I don't think. I think this is actually. I mean, I don't know the guy personally, but it would not surprise me if this were not like. Can you imagine? I mean, to pick another Indian guy, Vivek, in there, like trying to, like, like. It would just be so.
It would be in a suit, like full suit,
right?
Like.
Okay, and not in a Trump way, right? Trump would be comfortable in the suit, but like I actually think this is probably how Kash Patel actually is. And I don't know. I thought it was a nice moment of American glory, assimilation, and joy. Too few moments these days for me to criticize this.
Well, I think there's also a point someone was making to me earlier because they were like, "Oh, I just really want my FBI director to be like in a fedora and being very serious." And I'm like, "Okay,
in a fedora."
But like we had that and they spied on us and it didn't work out. Like, so whatever. If this is the FBI director that's not going to violate all my rights, that's fine. I'll take it.
So Rich McGinnis, my friend Richie, says he's played on a local hockey team here, like a rec hockey team with Kash Patel for a while. And Richie says the dudes on his team like him a lot, referring to Kash. This is a fact. I'm torn here. I'm a hockey bro and also a media guy, but are we paying for the strip? Didn't Kash criticize the same stuff under the previous admin? Either way that I can tweet such criticisms proves America is epic. All right. Well, I think it gets to this question of, whether it was authentic, if Richie says people on the hockey team like him. So we'll table that discussion for now and be right back in just one moment. Have to take a quick break. If you finally want to fix your gut, make your hair healthier and stronger, and add some glow to your skin in 2026, you need to add colostrum to your daily routine. Today's sponsor, Cowboy Colostrum, offers the highest quality bovine, that's of course cow, colostrum available in the U.S. Cowboy Colostrum is 100% made in America from 100% American grass-fed cows. And don't worry, Cowboy Colostrum only collects the surplus colostrum after baby calves have had their fill. Cowboy is easy to drink and is made with delicious natural ingredients and no artificial flavors. You simply add a scoop of their chocolate, Madagascar vanilla, matcha, or strawberry into your coffee or smoothie and feel great the entire day. Not only will Cowboy Colostrum bring stability to your gut, the peptides and growth factors will make your skin and hair look amazing. For a limited time, our listeners get a great deal, up to 25% off their entire order. Just head to cowboycolostrum.com/afterparty and use code afterparty at checkout. That's 25% off when you use code afterparty at cowboycolostrum.com/afterparty. All right, we're back now with Rachel Bovard of the Conservative Partnership Institute and Inez Stepman of Independent Women. And I want to talk about what happened at the BAFTAs. This is a wild story that has become racialized it's not surprising at all given what actually happened. But basically, I'm not going to play the video because nobody needs to hear the N-word being shouted. But it was a presentation of award at the BAFTAs at the UK. And there's a movie out right now actually winning awards called I Swear, based on the true story of a man who struggles with Tourette syndrome. So they brought that man into the audience, warned the audience ahead of time that he may have tics and outbursts because, of course, he has Tourette's during the broadcast. And he did shout the N-word when Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were presenting an award. This, though, let's put Jamel Hill up on the screen, has turned into a major racial controversy. Jamel Hill says, asking for more grace for the person who shouted a racist slur instead of for Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, who had to push through being embarrassed in front of their peers. But that's often the expectation, that Black people are just supposed to be okay with being disrespected and dehumanized so that other people don't feel bad. That was, I think, in response to news that Alan Cumming of Traitors fame, I mean also of other fame, but for the purposes of this week, Traitors fame, was he got up and said something like, this is what we expected, it's part of the disease, etc. Jamie Foxx joins in and says, the man who shouted the N-word at the BAFTAs, quote, meant that shit. And again, this has turned into a big thing. The man, John Davidson, not the writer, our friend John Daniel Davidson from The Federalist, but the man John Davidson the movie is based on, was saying that he left the ceremony after that happened, that he is mortified. And of course, if you watch the trailer for the movie, or if you've spent 5 minutes learning about Tourette's, you know that what it does is make people say things they don't want to say. And so this idea that this was an intentional racial slight, that it was, I just think it's, the whole thing is so sad. This poor man left the events. He was mortified. The entire point of the movie is about people who struggle with this disease, and you're honoring it at the ceremony. Rachel, what do you think?
Well, I think it's just this like layer of detachment and commitment to, again, these sort of like race politics, identity politics. Like, you've just made a movie about this. Like, you've just celebrated this story. You are now, you made a movie about what is a very messy reality. But then when confronted with that reality in its full messiness in your face and being actually like impacted by it and getting it on you in some respect, it's like, oh, I cannot, right? Like, this is an outrage. And it goes to the point of like, why do we listen to celebrities about literally anything? Like, they are not normal people. Like,
I just read a Nicki Minaj tweet on the show, Rachel, about Gavin Newsom.
Okay. Separate category for Nicki Minaj at this moment. But setting that aside.
That's always what Republicans do, and we will regret it forever.
I know, we will. No, and that is correct.
That any celebrity says anything nice about us, we're like,
we fall over
American
hero Nicki Minaj.
The only reason I have a special.
That's how we ended up with Schwarzenegger as governor of California, and he was worse than most of the Democratic governors of California.
But I'm never going to get over the picture of Trump and Nikki holding hands with Nikki's like 9-inch like nails.
That was beautiful. Like, I had Grok turn it into a Renaissance painting. Anyway, Rachel, go on.
No, I mean, it's just the point. Like, how can you say you are celebrating this film, again, about a very messy reality, but then when confronted with it, condemn the person at its center? Like, you are just heartless and graceless at this point.
What do you think, Inez?
I mean, I kind of just got to go with what John McWhorter said. I think we worship race and identity. That's the only explanation for not even being able to give grace to people in a situation where it's obviously like a neurological disease. That hearing that word is, to be clear, like, it's an ugly word. I understand it's an ugly word. I never use it myself. I don't like hearing people use it, but it also isn't magic, right?
Yeah.
Like there is no magic. And again, actually, I'm going to cite John McWhorter and saying, like, we had a healthier attitude towards this in the 90s, where, for example, you could read the N-word in Huck Finn, and you would read it out loud as part of like reading this literature, or you could have a panel in which you would quote somebody saying this, right? And nobody had a fit over it. The fact that we've turned it into it literally reminds me of pre-civilizational tribes that like have some taboo around some, the word, the name of God or something. And
Voldemort.
Just a word, people. I know it's an ugly word, but nobody is actually injured by this word in such an astonishing way that we need to have a hysterical fit over somebody saying it as a matter of a neurological disease. Okay, This is not like, or do you remember there was the college professor who was saying the Chinese word, which is apparently a filler word, nega, N-E-G-A, over and over again. And like, people in the class were so offended they had to leave the class, even though this is an entirely different language and doesn't have anything to do with the English N-word, right? It just, this level of worship around a word is indicative of something sick in the way that we think about race. That's, I mean, it may not be like the most popular opinion out there these days, but like I truly think that this has gone way overboard. It has gone from an understandable reaction to an ugly word with an ugly history, and an understandable sort of taboo in polite society of using that word, to like it literally being a curse, an incantation that by mere listening to it, like you're going to burst into flames. Okay, nobody is going to burst into flames. It's fine. The guy has a disease. Okay, it's awkward. Move on.
That's the thing about Jamie Foxx's comment that just gets under my skin, and I think Rachel made such a good point about how everything is out the window when you can have an identity politics blow up. Jamie Foxx is extremely intelligent. He is a wonderful, rich, deep actor. He's very, very good. You have to be very smart to do that. And I don't know if he paused a second before posting that this man suffering from Tourette's, quote, meant that shit. I actually do feel badly for Black presenters who have to hear that in front of the world and react in time.
It is embarrassing. And I actually, but the same way that, you know, have you ever been around somebody with Down syndrome or like
absolutely
low IQ, like really, you know, clinically low IQ, and for example, they grab your butt?
100% thing. It's a thing
that happens, people. That is tolerating. And by the way, some of the worst reactions were not what you just read about Jamie Foxx. It was, we need to put guys like this in a separate room.
Yeah.
We need to segregate them in the closet.
Well, that's what he did. He left. And this film was being honored, and the whole point of what he suffers from is that he says things he doesn't want to say. And that was the art that they all wax poetic about so often. That was the point of this work of art.
Well, that's but that's the whole point. Like, it's an aesthetic, right? Everything about this is
I think that's a good point.
It's the, you know, the movie wasn't aesthetic. It wasn't meaningful. The things they purport to believe are not meaningful. This, race trophy thing is an aesthetic. You know, you have now ostracized this person that you made a movie about claiming to celebrate. Like, they mean nothing at the end of the day. It's a completely superficial take on everything. And to like Inez's point, people who have actually encountered this messiness in the real world, like I have a brother with Down syndrome, the stuff that I have gotten into with him, right? and this is, people like this exist, and they're beautiful and they're wonderful and they're created in the image of God. Like, why do they not? Everybody understands this who's lived around these people, except for the people purporting to celebrate them in Hollywood.
And he apologized and left the room and said he was mortified. So to blow it up into an international race instance is so sad. Before we run, guys, let's talk about Bonnie Blue. Listen, the entire world is enraptured by Punch, who is the sweetest little Japanese monkey you'll ever see in your life, and has been lugging around a little stuffed animal from IKEA that is now sold out around the zoo as he or she, unclear to me, I've seen both, tries to make friends and be nurtured, and it's horrible. Here we have, this is a Trump level weave. Here, though, we have a porn star in I was going to say Lily Phillips, well, Lily Phillips too, but also Bonnie Blue, who were kind of engaged in like a sexual arms race to bang as many people as possible in the shortest time period possible. And you have Bonnie Blue with 400 people in one day? 400 people one day. She takes a pregnancy test, does a whole video. This is F-17. We can put it up on the screen. The TMZ headline, Bonnie Blue says she's pregnant after having unprotected sex with 400 men. Pregnancy test comes back positive. And I don't know, guys. I mean, she is such a, I don't know if you've ever watched interviews with her, but she's like a psychopath more than even a Gavin Newsom. Like, she's just unfeeling and stoic in a sense that's robotic about having sex with so many people. It's bizarre. But here she is, I guess, trying to figure out whether or not she should have this baby. She took DNA samples of all of the 400 people that she slept with that day. I just don't even know what, my head is blowing up. She like did it for, I would argue, like TikTok and OnlyFans, because that was being rewarded. I don't know someone just stop me from rambling. I'm so sad about this whole situation. Mostly about Punch, but I'm sad about Bonnie Blue too.
Inez, don't make me take this. You have to.
Yes, now you have to take it because you asked not to.
No, I have not. I mean, honestly, congratulations, right? Like there's a new baby. We love babies. So congratulations to her. But like also this is like how the human body works. This is how babies get made. What did you think you were getting what's happening here?
Well, I mean, 400 people, it just shows the extreme. Like, and as we had your colleague Hadley on last week on one of the shows that we did about the new report that you all put out at Independent Women, and Hadley was talking about how the friction between sex and procreation has just been so removed to the point where we have a totally different approach to sex and motherhood. And Little Punch shows what happens when mothers don't take their job seriously enough. But enough about Punch. Bible is like the least maternal person that I can imagine. But I don't like. Maybe she'll surprise us. I don't know.
Look, having had a child changes you. That being said, I mean, I don't even know what to say about this kind of discourse because we're all participating in what is driving even this entire pregnancy thing. I'm sure is just a curated thing for clicks, kind of like the trajectory of porn stars who then convert to Christianity and then like film their baptism. And it's not that I don't think people can come back from, be forgiven for their sins or whatever under the rubric of Christianity. That's not my point, is to argue theologically with it. But it's obviously part of a coordinated game that then is like, you just get a whole new set of followers, right? And a whole new set of people who are giving you their clicks and money for like a new purpose, right? And it's just, it is always chasing attention and clicks and like, it just, the whole thing really repulses me. I have a hard time commenting on it. I don't really want to think about it.
Sorry.
So it's not good for the child, right?
That's right.
Children need their mothers and their fathers, and ideally they need their mother and father to be married under the same roof. Those are the most important things actually after life that children need. We are constantly engaged in the mommy wars and the like ridiculous things about edge case, like minor, should I put the baby for tummy time 20 minutes or 40 minutes a day? Like, do I have to show them the black and white flashcards? Is Montessori better or Waldorf method? Like all of the stupid mommy wars that go on constantly that are on a sleep training, whatever. Like, let's be honest, none of those things matter. What matters the most for these children is that they have their mother and father, biological mother and father under the same roof. Every other arrangement of quote unquote family is inferior by every study and by common sense to that arrangement. And that's what that child needs. And mother didn't act in a way that was conducive to that. And that's sad for the child, but difficult life is still life. So we wish the best.
Oh,
Inez crushed it.
I was going to say, you knocked that out of the park. And I really hope that Punch's mom was listening. I don't know if she's a listener, but Punch's mom, if you're out there, I think Inez just nailed it. So something to think about. All right. Inez Stepman of Independent Women and Rachel Bovard of the Conservative Partnership Institute. I love having you guys here. Thanks for staying up late. Not as late this time, but thank you guys. I know you're busy.
We like to come check in on the youth.
It's important. It's important. We need it. Thank you guys.
Much like Punch, we need to make sure that you're okay.
I really am like Punch. In so many ways. Still attached to stuffed animals. I feel like I'm living in a zoo. All right. I'll let you guys go. Oh, man, that was fun. I love it when they're here. And also, the audience loves it when they're here, so we have to keep bringing them back. Even if I hated it, they would still have to be here. Quick break. Small businesses are the backbone of the American economy. We all know this, but getting funding from traditional banks is an uphill battle. Of the 36 million small businesses in the U.S., over 70% report needing additional capital every year. Cardiff is the largest privately held small business lender in the U.S., having funded over $12 billion since 2004. Their application takes less than 5 minutes, has no impact on personal credit, and approvals happen in minutes with same-day funding. Banks try to lock out small businesses. Cardiff has the key. Big banks may not want to approve your business loans, but Cardiff does. If you've been in business for at least a year and are pulling in $20,000 a month in revenue, apply now for up to $500,000 in same-day business funding at cardiff.co/Emily. Again, that's cardiff.co/Emily. Real growth, fast funding. Cardiff, borrow better. I want to finish tonight on Puerto Vallarta. Some thoughts on what's happening across Mexico. It's actually not even just in Jalisco. It's also in Tamaulipas and around the country. The last estimate I saw, courtesy of Yoan Grillo, is great reporter on this beat. Crash Out is his Substack. You should follow it. He said 60 reported deaths of both cartel members and soldiers combined. Pray that doesn't tick up even higher than it already is. But if you haven't seen the scenes out of Puerto Vallarta, we can roll V3 here. This is credit to Justin Carpenter. Many videos rolling in from Puerto Vallarta, obviously a very popular winter tourist destination for people in the United States and Canada and really around the world. I mean, Puerto Vallarta is a beautiful place, like most of Mexico, and is flocked this time of year. Crazy stories about people trying to get out, scenes from the airport. It obviously looks like a war zone, and in a tourist town, that's especially jarring. What happened is El Mencho was killed by, that's the head of the Gulf cartel, was killed by Mexican law enforcement, apparently with quite an assist from U.S. intelligence. That's what the U.S. side is claiming. That's what the Trump administration is claiming. It looks like they used his girlfriend to lure him and then to kill him. So a lot, obviously, on the line. The reward, as you just saw up on the screen, was $15 million from the State Department for El Mencho, major cartel leader. And as most people understand, cartels run significant swaths of Mexico, of the land, of the territory. And when it happens, again, in a tourist town, which is a huge section of the Mexican economy, you can bet that the government is incredibly rattled. People stuck in airports, having nightmares at the hotel where they're at these, again, it's very jarring juxtaposition of these lush, all-inclusive resorts and people looking out at the scenes of a war zone, cars on fire, bodies in the streets, bullets being shot in multiple directions, absolutely crazy scenes. And I just think it's at least a good reminder, as Bill Melugin pointed out. I mean, he literally tweeted, quote, "A reminder that a vast majority of the millions who crossed the border illegally during the Biden administration were lining the pockets of cartels like CJNJ," so that's Jalisco New Generation Cartel, paying thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of money per head to be smuggled into the U.S. So, I mean, that is, by the way, I think I said El Mencho was Gulf Cartel. That was an excellent accent. CG. So as Melugin said, Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG. That is why this happened in the heart of Jalisco. And Melugin's point is so critical because the reason, I mean, there were headlines that went ignored about this, or there were reports that went totally ignored about this during the Biden administration. The cartels, because such a big chunk of their business became human smuggling. Every single, as people told me in northern Mexico when I was down there in 2021 or 2022, I said every single person who crosses has paid the cartels. Multiple sources told me that on the ground. Every single person who crosses has paid the cartel. Well, how many individual people crossed during the Biden administration? Some people made multiple attempts, meaning they paid multiple times. And what percentage of that was profit? Wharton actually estimated it was like 80% of the revenue was profit. Stunning number. And there's crazy. So here, let me put this up on the screen. This is a Washington Times headline from 2024. Cartels make $32 million a week of migrants in one stretch of the Texas border, just one stretch of the border in that week. These estimates from back during the Biden administration. I'm reading here from another Washington Times report, one of the only outlets that was trying to put numbers on this, along with groups like the Center for Immigration Studies, which is, of course, anti-immigrant. Can't really accuse Wharton of being anti-immigrant. The New York Times did some research in this space a lot. The estimates vary, but the bottom line is that human smuggling became a massive chunk of cartel business during the Biden surge. The Washington Times, quote, estimated in 2022 that the border smuggling economy topped $20 billion annually, with at least 2.6 billion of that going specifically to cartel crossing fees. This is why Mexico was, in some cases, displeased with the Biden administration, because this was taking over. Now, Mexico has cartel corruption, so it's a mixed bag. And obviously, the Trump administration has accused Claudia Sheinbaum of being part of cartel corruption, or at least being afraid of cartels to push back. They are cooperating with CIA flights, obviously with intelligence in this case. I hope that this, scenes are all over Mexico, not just Jalisco, not just Puerto Vallarta. You're seeing some of this in like Baja, or going up towards Baja, like Tijuana. So coming closer and closer to the border, it obviously hits very close to home when you see American tourists in Puerto Vallarta, probably for the average person who follows the news. That is an enormous amount of money that cartels pocketed. It helped them become even more formal organizations, almost parallel institutions to the government, in some cases more powerful than the government in different parts of Mexico. And that was a direct result of Biden-era policies, which were enriching the cartels with every single person who crossed. It's part of why it was a disastrous policy in the first place, to create so many pull factors, making it easier and easier, because the Biden administration was afraid of being criticized by the far left because they were being accused of racism. If they had continued they had accused the Trump policies of being racist. So if they had continued some of those Trump policies, they kind of painted themselves into a corner. And of course, ideologically, many of them wanted to open up the borders because they want borders to be much, much thinner and less stringent. And that created an enormous amount of pull factors, where you had people from all over the world, not just South and Central America, pouring up to the U.S. border. When I was there, I met people from Russia. There have been many people from China. And the Mexican government wasn't exactly pleased. Many people in the Mexican government weren't exactly pleased about this either, because every single person with more money in the pockets of the cartels, who are professional organizations at this point, they are multi-billion-dollar operations, probably bigger than some governments around the world. And they're enormously powerful. And a lot of that came right from the money they netted, the profits they netted during the Biden administration's pull factor induced surge, where every single migrant who came over, and again, the New York Times estimates like at least 8 million, probably 10 million is another, like, even conservative estimate. Other people say it's higher. The Washington Times also they kept a database of how much people said that they were paying to come over. And it was, I talked to people who had difference between, 10,000, 6,000, but all that money then is going to the cartels. They are sometimes then asked to smuggle drugs or to pay ransom once they get into the United States. It was a disaster, chaotic. Almost everyone has rejected the Biden border policy. So the question you should be asking yourselves now, if you don't like the Trump policy, which is also many people, is underwater on immigration ahead of tomorrow's State of the Union, the question you should be asking yourself now is, what policy are Democrats offering that would be a better alternative, a more humane alternative, that is not a subsidy to cartels, that does not wreak havoc on the lives of average Americans, or average Mexicans for that matter, people in Guatemala and other countries that people were going through to come up, smuggling routes that became cartel-controlled territory. The story of this was not being told by the media as it was happening, and it was so much bigger than what anyone was saying. It was so much bigger than this question about, whether people even had legitimate asylum claims, or what a just immigration policy is. It was this massive foreign policy question too. It was a humanitarian question. It was obviously wreaking havoc all over these countries. And all people had to do was go down there or talk to people who were down there and reject the framing, the media's framing, that this was just about, the Biden administration trying to restore America to the Statue of Liberty poem glory. It wasn't about that. I mean, this was the downstream consequences of those pull factor policies are continuing to wreak havoc throughout the region. Cartels were powerful before it, but they're more powerful now. They have even more professional operations, more weapons, more power, more land, more money because of it. So you have to connect the two of them. So that's the question: is what does a good policy alternative look like from people who may be in a position of power to swing the pendulum back from Trumpism in just a couple of years? All right, that does it for us on tonight's edition of After Party. Thanks so much for joining us. As a reminder, please do subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. You can email me at emily@doublemcmedia.com. We'll see you right back here on Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern.